Father McKinnon handed me the folded paper with 5 rules written in his careful handwriting. His weathered hands shook slightly as he passed it over. "Timothy," he said, using my first name instead of the formal address I'd grown used to. "These rules aren't suggestions. They're requirements for survival." I unfolded the paper and read. 1. Never look into her eyes for more than 3 seconds. 2. Don't touch anything she touches. 3. Only speak Latin during the ritual. 4. If she says your name, ignore her. 5. If all candles go out, leave immediately. Father, I don't understand. Why these specific? Because I learned them the hard way. He adjusted his collar and walked toward the window of his office. Sarah Brennan has been in that room for 6 days. 3 priests have tried before you. 2 are in psychiatric care. 1 transferred to a monastery in Montana and won't speak about what happened. The late afternoon sun cast long rectangles across his desk. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket, feeling the weight of it against my chest. Why me then? I just finished seminary last month. Father McKinnon turned back to face me. His blue eyes held something I'd never seen before, genuine fear mixed with resignation. Sometimes fresh eyes see things differently. Sometimes inexperience is protection. He paused. And sometimes, Timothy, we simply run out of options. The Brennan house sat at the end of Maple Street, like a tired old man leaning against a fence post. Yellow paint peeled from its sides, and the front porch sagged under the weight of too many Michigan winters. Mrs. Brennan met me at the door before I could knock. "Father Walsh, thank God you're here." Her voice cracked with exhaustion. Dark circles ringed her eyes, and her brown hair hung limp around her face. "She's been asking for you." "Asking for me? But I've never met your daughter." Mrs. Brennan's mouth tightened. "She's been saying your name since yesterday. Timothy Walsh, over and over. Sometimes she sings it." A chill ran through my stomach, but I pushed it down. I was here to help, not to second-guess myself before I'd even started. "How long has Sarah been ill?" 2 weeks. Mrs. Brennan led me through a living room cluttered with medical books, empty coffee cups, and wadded tissues. It started small. She stopped eating. Then she stopped sleeping. Then she started talking to people who weren't there. We climbed a narrow staircase that groaned under our feet. Family photos lined the walls. Sarah at various ages, always smiling, always normal. In the most recent photo, she wore a graduation cap and gown, her arm around a young man with kind eyes. "That's her boyfriend, Marcus," Mrs. Brennan said, noticing my gaze. "He hasn't been able to visit since this started. She says things to him that aren't true. Horrible things." At the top of the stairs, a hallway stretched toward the back of the house. 3 doors lined the left side, all closed. From behind the middle door came a sound like humming, but broken and tuneless. "That's her room," Mrs. Brennan whispered. "Dr. Martinez sedated her this morning, but it only lasted 2 hours. Nothing works anymore." I set my bag down and removed the items I'd need: a leather-bound Bible, a vial of holy water, and 6 white candles. Mrs. Brennan watched me arrange them on a small table in the hallway. "The other priests brought more supplies," she said. "Crosses, icons, bottles of blessed oil. Sometimes less is more." I hoped my voice sounded more confident than I felt. "Mrs. Brennan, I need you to wait downstairs during the ritual. No matter what you hear, don't come up." Her face crumpled. "But what if she needs me? What if something goes wrong? Then I'll call for you." I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your daughter needs professional help right now, not motherly comfort. Trust me to do what I'm trained to do." After she left, I lit the 6 candles and arranged them in a circle around the hallway table. The flames danced in the still air, casting shifting patterns on the floral wallpaper. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket and read the rules one more time. Never look into her eyes for more than 3 seconds. The humming from Sarah's room stopped. "Timothy Walsh," came a voice through the door. Clear, sweet, and perfectly normal. "I know you're out there. Don't touch anything she touches." I opened my Bible to the passages I'd marked earlier and took a deep breath. The doorknob felt cold under my palm as I turned it. Sarah Brennan sat cross-legged on her bed, facing the door as if she'd been waiting for me. She looked exactly like her photos. Blonde hair, green eyes, small nose with a scatter of freckles. She wore a white nightgown that her mother had probably changed her into that morning. Everything about her appeared completely normal except for one detail. She hadn't blinked since I opened the door. "Hello, Timothy." She smiled, and her teeth were perfectly straight and white. "I've been so excited to meet you. Only speak Latin during the ritual." I began, reading from the Latin text. I kept my eyes focused on the Bible pages, glancing up at her only briefly to check her position. "That's not very friendly," Sarah said. "Don't you want to have a conversation first? Get to know each other?" I continued reading, but my voice caught slightly on the next phrase. Her tone was so ordinary, so human. This wasn't what I'd expected from someone supposedly possessed by evil forces. "Your seminary professor was Dr. Harrison, wasn't he?" Sarah asked, swinging her legs off the side of the bed. "He always wore that ugly brown tie on Tuesdays, and he had that habit of clicking his pen when students gave wrong answers." My eyes snapped up to her face before I could stop myself. She was still smiling, still not blinking. I counted. 1, 2, 3. I looked back down at the Bible. If she says your name, ignore her. "Timothy, you're being rude. I'm trying to make conversation." She stood up from the bed, and I heard her bare feet hit the hardwood floor. "Did you know your mother calls you every Sunday at 2 o'clock? She always asks if you're eating enough vegetables." I forced myself to keep reading Latin, even as my mind raced. How could she know these things? I'd never met the Brennan family before today. "She's worried about you living alone in that apartment above the bakery," Sarah continued, moving closer. "She thinks the smell of bread will make you gain weight. She doesn't know you actually like the smell, because it reminds you of your grandmother's kitchen." The words on the page blurred slightly. I blinked hard and refocused on the text. "Your grandmother made the best apple pie in Gratiot County," Sarah said. Her voice was right next to me now, though I hadn't heard her cross the room. "She died when you were 12, and you still have her recipe card in your wallet. You've never made the pie, though. You're afraid it won't taste the same. If all candles go out, leave immediately." I risked a quick glance toward the hallway. All 6 candles still burned steadily, their flames straight and bright. But when I looked back at my Bible, Sarah was standing directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something fruity and young. "Look at me, Timothy." I kept my eyes down, but I could see her hands in my peripheral vision. Her fingernails were bitten short and painted with chipped blue polish, like any college student might wear. "Please look at me. I'm not scary. I'm just Sarah." The honesty in her voice made me hesitate. What if this girl wasn't possessed at all? What if she was just sick, maybe suffering from a psychotic break or severe depression? What if I was performing an ancient ritual on someone who needed modern medicine instead? "I know what you're thinking," Sarah said softly. "You're wondering if this is real. You're wondering if your church sent you here to torture a sick girl instead of helping her." I closed my eyes and continued reading Latin, but doubt crept into my thoughts like water through a cracked foundation. "The other priests didn't doubt," Sarah continued. "They came in here convinced I was some kind of monster. They shouted their Latin and threw their holy water and commanded demons to leave my body. But you're different, aren't you? You actually care about me as a person." Her words felt warm and reasonable. I opened my eyes and looked at the Bible pages. but the Latin seemed harsh and unnecessary now. This girl was clearly suffering, but maybe not in the way the church assumed. "My parents are good people," Sarah said, settling back onto her bed. "They love me, and they're scared. When the doctors couldn't help, they turned to the church because they didn't know what else to do. But Timothy, I'm not possessed. I'm just different now." I looked up at her face, forgetting about the 3-second rule. Her green eyes were kind and sad, full of intelligence and pain. She looked like someone who needed compassion, not an exorcism. "What happened to you, Sarah?" I asked, abandoning the Latin for the first time. She smiled, and her whole face lit up. "Now we're getting somewhere. Close the Bible, Timothy. Sit down with me. Let me tell you what really happened." I hesitated, my hands still gripping the leather binding. Something nagged at the back of my mind, but her voice was so sincere, so human. "The other priests wouldn't listen," Sarah continued. "They just wanted to perform their ritual and leave. But you're different. You see me as a person, not a problem to solve." I closed the Bible and took a step toward the bed. "That's it," Sarah said, patting the space next to her. "Come sit with me. I'll tell you everything." As I moved closer, one of the candles in the hallway flickered, then another. By the time I noticed, 4 of the 6 flames had dimmed to barely visible wisps of light. "Timothy," Sarah said, and her voice held a note I hadn't heard before, something eager and hungry. "Look into my eyes. Really look at me." The 5th candle went out. I grabbed my Bible and backed toward the door, remembering the rules just as the 6th and final candle died, plunging the hallway into darkness. "Timothy, wait," Sarah called after me, but her voice had changed completely. It was deeper now, older, and filled with something that made my skin crawl. "We were just getting acquainted." I ran down the stairs 3 at a time, clutching the Bible against my chest. Mrs. Brennan met me at the bottom, her face full of hope and desperation. "How did it go? Is she better?" I looked back up the dark staircase. From Sarah's room came the sound of laughter, not the sweet, normal laugh of a college-aged girl, but something else entirely. Something that had been pretending to be human. "Mrs. Brennan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to make some phone calls." "But the ritual, did it work?" The laughter upstairs grew louder, and underneath it, I could hear Sarah's voice calling my name over and over, singing it like a lullaby. "No," I said, pulling out my cell phone with shaking hands. "It didn't work at all." But as I dialed Father McKinnon's number, I realized something that chilled me more than anything that had happened upstairs. The rules had worked exactly as intended. They had protected me from something that was very good at pretending to be human, something that knew far too much about my life, and something that had almost convinced me to abandon everything I'd been taught. The question now was whether 5 simple rules would be enough for round 2. Because as I stood in that living room, listening to the thing upstairs call my name in Sarah Brennan's voice, I knew this was far from over. Father McKinnon answered on the first ring. "Timothy, what happened?" "I need backup," I said, watching the stairs as the laughter continued. "And I think we're going to need more than 5 rules." Father McKinnon arrived 40 minutes later with Father Rodriguez, a thin man in his 50s who carried a worn leather briefcase. They found me sitting in the Brennan kitchen, drinking coffee that had gone cold while Mrs. Brennan paced near the window. "The laughing stopped about 10 minutes ago," I told them, "but I can still hear her moving around up there." Father McKinnon set his own bag on the kitchen table and looked at me carefully. "Tell me exactly what happened." I described everything, how normal Sarah had seemed, how she knew details about my life she couldn't possibly know, how she'd almost convinced me to abandon the ritual. When I finished, Father Rodriguez opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of manila folders. Sarah Brennan, age 21, psychology major at Central Michigan University. He flipped through pages covered in handwritten notes. No history of mental illness, no drug use, no trauma indicators. Straight A student, volunteers at the animal shelter, engaged to be married next summer. Then what's wrong with her? Mrs. Brennan asked, finally sitting down at the table with us. Father Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Father McKinnon. Mrs. Brennan, has Sarah traveled anywhere unusual in the past month? Visited any old buildings, historical sites, anything like that? She went on a field trip with her archaeology class 3 weeks ago. Some old farmhouse north of Clare. She said they were documenting artifacts from the 1800s. Mrs. Brennan frowned. She came home excited about it. Said she'd found something interesting. What kind of something? I asked. I don't know. She wouldn't show me. Just said it was for her research project, and she wanted to surprise everyone. Mrs. Brennan's voice grew smaller. That was the last normal conversation we had. Father Rodriguez made a note in his folder. Timothy, when she was talking to you, did she mention anything about finding something? Or anyone giving her something? I thought back to our conversation. No. She just talked about wanting me to see her as a person instead of a problem. She seemed to know things about my past, my family, my daily routine. That's the pattern, Father McKinnon said quietly. It gathers information somehow, uses it to create trust, to make you doubt what you're dealing with. From upstairs came the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate. We all looked at the ceiling as the footsteps moved from Sarah's room to the hallway, then stopped directly above us. She knows we're here, Mrs. Brennan whispered. Father Rodriguez closed his folder. Mrs. Brennan, I need you to go stay with a relative tonight. Pack a bag and leave as soon as possible. I can't leave my daughter. You can't help her by staying, Father McKinnon said gently. What we're dealing with feeds on emotional connections. Your presence makes it stronger. Mrs. Brennan looked between the three of us, then at the ceiling where the footsteps had resumed their slow pacing. Will you be able to help her? We're going to try, I said. But we need you safe first. After Mrs. Brennan left to pack, Father Rodriguez spread out several sheets of paper on the kitchen table. They contained floor plans, diagrams, and more handwritten notes. The farmhouse Sarah visited was the old Kowalski place, he explained. Built in 1847, abandoned since 1962. Local historians say 3 families lived there over the years, and all 3 left suddenly without explanation. What kind of artifacts would be there? I asked. Farm tools, household items, personal belongings left behind. Father Rodriguez tapped one of the diagrams. But according to the archaeology professor, Sarah spent most of her time in the basement. She found something down there that the previous survey teams had missed. Father McKinnon leaned forward. Any idea what? The professor said it looked like a small metal box, maybe 4 inches square. Very old, with strange markings on the sides. Sarah insisted on photographing it in place before removing it. The footsteps above us stopped again, directly over the kitchen table. She brought it home, I said, understanding flooding through me. Whatever's in that box, she brought it here. Father Rodriguez nodded, and 3 days later, the symptoms started. We made our plans quickly. Father McKinnon would lead the ritual this time, with Father Rodriguez and me supporting. We'd follow the same 5 rules, but we'd work in shifts to prevent any one person from being isolated with the entity for too long. As we prepared to go upstairs, I pulled Father McKinnon aside. There's something else. When she was talking to me, she didn't feel evil. She felt sad, lonely, like she really was just a sick girl who needed help. That's how it works, Father McKinnon said, checking his supplies one final time. It doesn't present itself as a monster. It presents itself as someone deserving of compassion. The moment you start feeling sorry for it, you've already lost. But what if... Timothy. His voice was firm, but not unkind. In 30 years of ministry, I've learned that evil rarely announces itself. It whispers. It suggests. It makes you question everything you know to be true. Trust the rules, not your feelings. We climbed the stairs in silence. I carried 6 new candles. Father Rodriguez had the holy water and Bible, and Father McKinnon brought a small wooden cross that looked much older than anything I'd seen in our church. The hallway felt different now, colder, smaller, as if the walls had moved closer together while we were downstairs. I lit the 6 candles and arranged them in the same pattern as before. Father McKinnon approached Sarah's door and knocked gently. "Sarah, we're here to help you." "I know," came her voice from inside. "Come in, please, all of you." Father McKinnon opened the door and we entered together. Sarah sat in the same position as before, cross-legged on her bed, facing the door. But something had changed in her appearance. Her skin looked paler, and her blonde hair hung limp around her face. The biggest change was in her eyes. They seemed larger somehow, taking up more space in her face. "Father McKinnon," she said with a bright smile, "it's so good to see you again." Father McKinnon didn't respond. He opened his Bible and began reading Latin immediately, not giving her a chance to establish any kind of rapport. "And Father Rodriguez," Sarah continued, turning her attention to him. "How is your sister Maria? Still struggling with the cancer treatments?" Father Rodriguez's hands tightened on his holy water, but he didn't speak. "Timothy," Sarah said, swinging her gaze to me. "You came back. I was hoping you would." I forced myself to look at the floor, counting seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. Then I looked away. Father McKinnon's Latin filled the room, strong and confident. Unlike my halting attempts earlier, his words flowed smoothly, practiced from years of experience. "You know," Sarah said conversationally, "Maria's tumor has grown since her last scan. The doctors haven't told her yet, but it's spread to her lymph nodes." Father Rodriguez took a sharp breath, but kept his eyes on his Bible. "They're giving her maybe 6 months," Sarah continued, "unless she tries that experimental treatment in Houston. But the insurance won't cover it, and Father Rodriguez doesn't have $20,000 sitting around." "She's lying," Father McKinnon said quietly, not breaking from his Latin reading. "Am I?" Sarah tilted her head. "Father Rodriguez, when was the last time you spoke to Maria? Thursday? Friday? Has she called you back yet?" I watched Father Rodriguez's face grow pale. His lips moved silently, and I realized he was praying. "Timothy," Sarah said, turning back to me. "Did you call your mother after you left here? She's been trying to reach you for hours. Something about your father." My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to focus on Father McKinnon's steady Latin. The first rule: never look into her eyes for more than 3 seconds. I'd already broken it once today. "He collapsed at work," Sarah continued. "They took him to the hospital in an ambulance. Your mother is there alone, wondering why her son isn't answering his phone." "Don't listen," Father McKinnon warned, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "She's sitting in the waiting room right now," Sarah said. "Room 302 of Gratiot Medical Center. The doctors are running tests, but they think it might be his heart. He's been having chest pains for weeks but didn't want to worry anyone." My hand moved toward my phone before I caught myself. Father McKinnon noticed and shook his head sharply. "The tests will show a 90% blockage in his main artery," Sarah said. "Emergency surgery tonight if he's lucky." "But you'll never forgive yourself if you're not there, will you, Timothy?" 2 of the candles in the hallway flickered. "She's getting stronger," Father Rodriguez whispered. Father McKinnon raised his voice, pushing through the Latin more aggressively. Sarah laughed, not the harsh, inhuman sound from earlier, but a gentle, amused chuckle. "You're all so dedicated," she said, "but you're helping the wrong person. I'm not the one who needs saving. Timothy's father is dying. Father Rodriguez's sister is suffering. Your Latin won't help them." 3 more candles flickered and dimmed. "We need to finish this now," Father McKinnon said urgently. "Wait," Sarah said, standing up from the bed. "I have something to show you." She walked to her dresser and picked up a small metal box, exactly as Father Rodriguez had described. 4 inches square, covered in symbols that looked like no language I'd ever seen. "This is what I found," Sarah said, holding the box out toward us. "Do you want to know what's inside?" "Don't touch it," Father McKinnon commanded. Rule number 2. "But it's fascinating," Sarah said. "It's a gift. Someone left it there for me to find. Someone who understood that I was special, that I could handle what's inside." She opened the box, and I caught a glimpse of something dark and smooth inside, like polished stone. "Timothy," Sarah said, holding the box toward me. "Look at it. Really look at it." I kept my eyes fixed on Father McKinnon's Bible, but I could feel something pulling at my attention, like a magnet drawing metal. "It wants to show you things," Sarah said. "Beautiful things, true things. Things about your father, your future, your purpose." The last candle in the hallway went out. "Now!" Father McKinnon shouted. We ran for the door, but Sarah's voice followed us down the stairs. "Timothy," she called, and her voice was changing again, becoming deeper, more resonant. "Your father is dying, and you're running away. What kind of son does that make you?" We reached the kitchen, and I immediately pulled out my phone. My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number. "Timothy, you can't," Father McKinnon said. "I have to know if she's telling the truth." The phone rang twice before my mother answered. "Timothy? Oh, thank God. I've been trying to call you." My blood turned to ice. "Mom, what's wrong?" "It's your father. He collapsed at work today. We're at the hospital now, and..." I hung up and stared at the other 2 priests. She was telling the truth. How did she know? Father Rodriguez sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Maria hasn't returned my calls since Thursday." "It doesn't matter," Father McKinnon said firmly. "This is what it does. It finds real fears, real problems, and uses them against you. Your father's condition isn't supernatural, it's medical. The doctors will handle it. But I should be there." "Not yet." Father McKinnon grabbed my shoulders. "Timothy, listen to me. That thing upstairs knew about your father because it can see things, sense things across distances. But it can't change what's already happening. Your father was going to collapse whether you were here or not. The surgery will succeed or fail, based on medical expertise, not on whether you're in that waiting room. How can you be sure? Because if it could actually control these events, it wouldn't need to manipulate us with them. It would just make our loved ones die and force us to leave." Father McKinnon released my shoulders. "It feeds on our emotional energy, our fear and guilt and desperation. The more we give it, the stronger it gets." From upstairs came a new sound, not footsteps or laughter, but something like scratching, as if fingernails were being drawn across wood. "We need to go back up there," Father Rodriguez said quietly. "But this time, we finish it." "How?" I asked. "The candles keep going out, and it knows exactly what to say to break our concentration." Father McKinnon pulled the old wooden cross from his bag and set it on the kitchen table. Up close, I could see that it was carved from dark wood and inlaid with small pieces of silver. This belonged to Father O'Brien, who dealt with a similar situation in 1987. The entity isn't actually in Sarah's body. It's in that box she found. As long as the box remains open, it can influence her, speak through her, feed off the emotional energy around her. So we close the box, we destroy it. Father McKinnon's voice was grim. But we have to get close enough to touch it first, and that means getting past everything it will throw at us. The scratching upstairs grew louder, more frantic. "It knows what we're planning," Father Rodriguez said. I thought about my father lying in a hospital bed, about Father Rodriguez's sister fighting cancer, about Mrs. Brennan pacing in some relative's house while her daughter's body was used by something that fed on human misery. What if we split up? I suggested. Two of us distract it while the third goes for the box. Father McKinnon considered this. It might work. But whoever goes for the box will be completely exposed. No protection, no backup. I'll do it, I said. Timothy, it's already established a connection with me. It'll focus its attention on me anyway. I picked up the wooden cross. If I can get close enough to touch the box with this, will that destroy it? According to Father O'Brien's notes, yes. But Timothy, if you look into that box directly, if you see what's actually inside, what happens? Father McKinnon and Father Rodriguez exchanged glances. We don't know, Father Rodriguez admitted. Father O'Brien never wrote about that part. The scratching stopped abruptly, replaced by Sarah's voice calling down the stairs. Timothy, I have something else to show you. Something about your father's surgery. I stood up, clutching the cross. Then I guess we're about to find out. As we prepared to climb the stairs one final time, I reviewed the rules in my mind. Never look into her eyes for more than 3 seconds. Don't touch anything she touches. Only speak Latin during the ritual. If she says your name, ignore her. If all candles go out, leave immediately. But now I was planning to break rule number 2 on purpose. I was going to touch the one thing she'd touched more than anything else, the source of her power. And as we reached the top of the stairs, I realized that sometimes protecting people meant breaking the very rules designed to protect you. The hallway was completely dark now, but from Sarah's room came a soft, pulsing light, like the glow of a campfire. Timothy, Sarah called softly, come see what I've learned about your father's heart. Father McKinnon and Father Rodriguez took positions on either side of the door, Bibles ready. I gripped the wooden cross and stepped into the light. Sarah stood in the center of the room, holding the open box above her head. The light came from whatever was inside it, something that seemed to shift and move like liquid mercury. Her face was illuminated from below, casting sharp edges where soft curves should be. Look, she said, tilting the box toward me. Look and see everything. I kept my eyes fixed on her chin, counting seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then I looked away and began moving slowly toward her. In the box, Sarah whispered, I can show you the exact moment your father's heart stops beating. The exact moment Father Rodriguez's sister takes her last breath. The exact moment Mrs. Brennan realizes her daughter is never coming back. Behind me, Father McKinnon and Father Rodriguez began reading Latin in unison, their voices strong and steady. But I can also show you how to prevent it, Sarah continued. How to save them all. All you have to do is look. I was 3 feet away now, close enough to see that the box was vibrating slightly in her hands. The thing inside it pulsed faster, as if excited by my proximity. Timothy, Sarah said, and her voice was completely normal again, completely human. Please, I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to go home. I stopped moving forward. This was the same voice that had almost convinced me earlier, the same tone of genuine fear and confusion. Help me, she whispered. The thing in the box, it won't let me go. It shows me horrible things, makes me say things I don't mean. But if you look into it, if you take some of the burden... Don't listen, Father McKinnon called from the doorway. But she sounds so real, I said, my voice barely audible. Because part of her is real, Father Rodriguez said. The entity uses her memories, her personality, her voice. But Sarah Brennan is gone, Timothy. What you're hearing are just echoes. No, I said, looking directly into Sarah's eyes without counting. She's still in there. I can feel it. Sarah smiled, and for a moment, her face looked completely normal again. Thank you for believing in me. Then her eyes went completely black. I lunged forward with the cross, aiming for the metal box in her hands. The moment the silver inlay touched the edge of the box, light exploded through the room like a flashbulb. Sarah screamed, not with her voice, but with something much deeper and older. The box fell from her hands and hit the floor with a sound like breaking glass. The pulsing light died instantly, and Sarah collapsed onto her bed, unconscious but breathing normally. In the sudden darkness, I heard Father McKinnon's voice. "Timothy? Are you all right?" I felt around on the floor until my fingers found the pieces of the metal box. It had shattered completely, leaving only fragments of tarnished metal and what felt like small pieces of stone. "I'm okay," I said, standing up slowly. "I think it's over." Father Rodriguez found a light switch, and the room's normal electric light revealed Sarah sleeping peacefully on her bed. Her face had returned to its natural color, and her breathing was deep and regular. "We should call Dr. Martinez," Father McKinnon said, "and Mrs. Brennan." As we cleaned up the fragments of the destroyed box, I thought about the rules that had saved my life twice in one day. They hadn't been suggestions or guidelines. They had been survival instructions, learned through experience by people who had faced this exact situation before. But sometimes, I realized, following the rules perfectly wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to know when to break them in service of something more important. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Surgery went perfectly. Dad's awake and asking for you." I smiled and typed back, "On my way." As we left the Brennan house, Father McKinnon handed me a new piece of paper with different rules written on it. "For next time," he said. "Next time? There's always a next time, Timothy. But now you know something most priests never learn. The rules will protect you, but love will save you." I folded the paper and put it in my pocket, next to the original 5 rules I'd followed so carefully. Sometimes, I thought, you need both.